It's Trump versus Clinton in a reality TV clash. We'll debate the point of political debates. And the polls say the US election is neck and neck. We'll ask why you should believe them. I'm Martin Stanford. This is Insight. Welcome to Insight. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are preparing to go head-to-head on live television in a series of debates that are expected to draw vast audiences, not just in the US, but around the world. It's 56 years since the first presidential debate between Kennedy and Nixon. Now they're held in some form in 16 countries around the world. But when the viewers switch on in their millions, are they likely to learn much about the candidates? Or is it all about the hype? Insight's Dana Lewis reports.
He's been called the brawler. Republican Donald Trump can mudsling, insult, and stir anger like very few politicians.
We have people that are stupid. Jeb Bush, let's say he's president. Rick Perry should have to have an IQ test. Hillary Clinton was the worst Secretary of State in the history of our country.
The rhetoric we're hearing from the other side keeps sinking lower.
And she's the lawyer, Democrat Hillary Clinton, measured, rehearsed, preferring to make an argument before the court of public opinion rather than politically slug it out.
I don't intend to get into the gutter.
The upcoming Clinton-Trump debates, and there are 3 of them in total, are expected to draw some of the highest-rated TV audiences in history. The question is, will voters hear substance, policy? Will they understand what their candidate's presidency will look like? Well, critics say, not likely.
We'll get to see them under pressure, and we'll get to see a little bit, some flashes of personality, although probably not more than we've seen before. But in terms of really learning how they would govern, really learning in depth what their ideas are, what their thinking really is, I think we're probably not going to learn very much at all.
John Donvan is a moderator for Intelligence Squared, which stages debates around the world. He says traditional U.S. presidential debates are really just parallel TV interviews and criticizes the format.
We voters deserve better.
On this issue, why do you think people should vote?
As far back as the first televised presidential debate held in 1960 between Richard Nixon and John Kennedy, ABC News refused to call it a debate at all.
So that our experience in government is comparable.
The two candidates refused to ask each other questions, and it was decided journalists would ask the questions instead. Nixon lost the debate because he was seen to be sweating under pressure, and he lost the election too.
I have no comment.
These debates are not debates. The real problem is that the candidates do not want to engage with each other in an actual argument. And I don't mean argument as in have a bickering match, but I mean actually having to present ideas, defend ideas, marshal facts, employ logic, and that's not what these things are. I think that's because the candidates are scared, and they're scared to look dumb.
There is no Soviet domination.
Case in point, 1976, Gerald Ford, who was president when Nixon resigned over Watergate, stunned audiences when he said he didn't think that Eastern Europe was under Soviet domination at the time.
I don't believe that the Romanians consider
a gaffe he never recovered from, and little-known Jimmy Carter became the next president. The fact is, the debates are a lot about television. Trump and Clinton's negotiations will include standing or sitting, not appearing taller or shorter. Former actor Ronald Reagan knew the power of television in 1980.
There you go again.
And 4 years later, Reagan anticipated the attack over his age, and he was ready for it.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Few would argue American politics had become nastier and more polarized over time. The 1984 vice presidential debate where Dan Quayle compared himself to Jack Kennedy, a crushing exchange.
Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
But all mild compared to today's political climate in the U.S. Critics say recent Republican leadership debates show political dialogue in America has at times become an ugly argument.
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. You are the single biggest liar.
Debates in American politics are remembered for specific moments or specific gaps. I think it's more likely that we're going to see some sort of breach of what we would consider decorum, most likely by Trump at these debates.
Trump has already called the debates unfair, but he wouldn't miss them for the world.
What are the wonderful things? What are the wonderful things it does?
It's a chance for a political knockout punch, although with so much of this staged and managed for TV, high drama, unlikely. I'm Dana Lewis, reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss that further, I'm joined by Lindsay Newman, who's the North American political risk analyst at the think tank IHS Markit. Also with us is Chris Burkitt, a television news executive and political debate specialist. Lindsay, we've heard these debates don't often persuade opinion to a huge degree. Is it going to be different this time around?
Well, absolutely. What is so fascinating right now with where things stand in this election is, number one, polling is super close, almost a dead heat. And secondly, what percentage of the population remains undecided? So at the beginning of September, we heard anywhere from 10 to 20% of voters were still undecided. That's a lot of people to be captured by this upcoming debate.
And what do you think each side will be strategizing, Chris, as they plan what to try and achieve against their opponent?
Well, I think what we've already seen in this election is that when the debate is about Trump, Clinton does well in the polls, and when the debate is about Clinton, Trump does well in the polls. So I think the strategy will be to make the debate about the other guy, whoever the other guy is.
And it's about competence, I suppose. It's about that commander-in-chief, leader of the country. Do you think that Donald Trump starts off on a minus on that score?
Well, I think what Trump wants to do when he goes out there on Monday night is to show that he has the temperament, that he can appear presidential, to put those fears at ease. So that
really? Because he's deliberately not been presidential in some ways so far, hasn't he?
Well, if anything, he's unpredictable. So I think we're going to see a mixed bag. I think we'll see the presidential side, and we're going to see Trump come out and try to be a bulldog.
So Hillary might want to test that presidential claim, I suppose, by trying to get him angry?
I guess that's exactly what she'll do. She'll try to get him angry, and I think the great advantage for Trump in these debates is that the bar he has to pass is very low. If he doesn't get angry, if she fails to rile him, then I think the media, the pundits will see that as him having done well in the debates. All he's got to do is keep his temper, be a bit level-headed. Every time he does anything that is reasonable, he's praised for looking presidential, and all he's doing is being reasonable, and I think that's all he needs to do this time.
And yet, if she comes out, Chris, as the sole sort of cold, efficient, veteran, experienced political operative, maybe that lacks enough personality compared with his fire and brimstone approach.
That's right. I mean, I think she does have a passion problem when it comes to portraying herself in these things, and that's the other thing she's got to do. In the election cycle, the primaries against Obama, when she showed her passion after the New Hampshire primary, that was something that actually connected with the public. So if she can do something like that in this thing, then I think she'll certainly see the benefit of it. But it's a difficult one to do because her whole image is as one of an efficient and seasoned statesperson, and I think that's the problem that she's got, to get these two things to play off against each other.
And the Hillary liar claim that Trump has used so often, does he use that in the debates, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're going to certainly see more questions about the emails, and he's going to come out on the offensive on that. And just as she wants to ruffle him, he's going to want to get under her pillow.
Tired of all that? Isn't it snooze fest? I mean, Benghazi, terrible at the time, but so what?
I think the audience has shown, I think the ratings have shown that they're not tired of that. We just had the Commander-in-Chief Forum, and that was really the bulk of the interest there. But I think what she has to do is come out and say again that she's sorry, and try to shift the focus back onto Trump, much like Chris was saying.
Let's get an insight in some of the processes involved here. Now, Chris, you were involved in the very first UK experience of bringing the American style of presidential, or in our case, political leadership debates to this country. There's an awful lot that has to be orchestrated behind the scenes in it. Can you give us an insight into how much?
Well, we had several months of negotiations, and it's a slightly different process here in the UK because we don't have what they have in America, which is the Commission for the Presidential Debates, which is supposedly an independent operation which puts together the rules and puts together the lists of moderators and discusses the list of moderators with the various parties. I mean, how independent it is of course a big question mark, because it's chaired by a Republican and the number 2 there is a Democrat, and it's very good at keeping out the minor parties by setting the thresholds quite high so that they don't get involved in the election debates. But it is a complicated process. When we had our debates in the UK, we were largely laughed at for having 76 very strict rules, amongst them very tight rules about the way the audience behaves. But while we were going through our own rules, we were given a copy of the American presidential debate rules, and it was 250 pages long. I mean, they're incredibly detailed. Now, I think there's more lawyers involved in America than there were in our rules in the UK. But everything from camera angles to who goes first, to the role of the moderator, to how the audience is selected, these are all things that they're...
Who stands where, that kind of thing?
Absolutely,
Is that argued over?
Sure. And the topic selection, I mean, we've seen what the topics are for the upcoming debate. All of that is very much under negotiation and even subject to change. We know that the debate topics that are coming up, security, prosperity, and America's direction, they've made clear that news events could intervene and topics could shift.
And the moderator's role is quite important. Or maybe it isn't, because aren't they so restricted in the American theatre of agreement here that they literally just, if you like, keep time, make sure you speak for a minute or whatever has been agreed, and then move on? Or are they allowed to be more interactive than that and challenge a view?
Well, I think we've seen over this campaign that the moderator role actually takes on quite a lead role, quite important, and really is just subject to criticism after the debates. But they are carefully selected. We have Lester Holt coming up on Monday night. He's a well-respected news anchor, and he has helped select the topics for Monday night. So in that sense, it's very important.
And you'd anticipate that Lester Holt, with his sort of network news credibility, would intervene and challenge?
Well, we saw in the Foreign Policy Forum they had a couple of weeks ago that the lack of challenge of the candidates on the issues of facts became in itself a story after the debate, with Matt Lauer not pushing anybody when they came out with statements that they claimed were true. And so we have had some sort of whispers this time around about fact checkers in the ears of the moderators. Normally, television anchors such as yourself will have someone in his ear telling them to wind up or keep going or whatever, but not have someone necessarily saying that fact was wrong, that fact was right. And though Chris Wallace, who I think is doing the third one, has said, I will definitely not be doing any fact checking during these debates, we haven't heard those clear statements from the other moderators.
Because, of course, the landscape has changed. It's not just a network television programme anymore, is it? Yeah. It's a simultaneous webcast. Other people can comment. Second screen viewing, of course, for Americans around the world as well as at home will be going on. So if you want to plug into sort of instant spin, you can just find a website you like or is in line with your political point of view.
No, absolutely. They're expecting record numbers, as many as 100 million estimated to be tuning in. And then just as many will be tuning in to see what the pundits say afterwards. Everybody wants to know who has won that debate and where that's going to position them in the polls for a bounce, perhaps. Anywhere from 3 to 4 points is as high as the bounces tend to be after a debate. That could be significant in such a tight race.
And the spin room operation, Chris, I think in the UK we found that quite informative. Do you think in America that's even more important?
Well, absolutely, because we often get the situation in America where the audience that's watching at home thinks one person has won, but the pundits and the media say the other person has won. And the bounce in the polls that happens after a debate in the US almost always happens because of what the pundits and the media have said and not what people at home have actually thought of the debates.
So is that an exact science? How do you make sure you master the spin room? Just make sure you get your good people in there, I suppose.
Well, there's definitely not an exact science to it. The best the candidates can do is to hope to come out and accomplish the goals they're setting out to do, and leave it there, really.
It should be good theatre, whatever happens. Lindsay Newman, Chris Burkett, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
This is Inside. Coming up, we'll ask you if you should put your trust in political polls.